Here's the cruelest twist. The man who saves her is also using her. Everyone sees the church rescue and thinks that's the hero. Wrong. Elena escapes one monster only to discover she's now the key piece in another man's war. Victor wants to own her. Adrian wants to use her to destroy Victor, and right in the middle is a woman who was traded, hunted, caged, and still somehow decides she will belong to no one. That's why this story hits so hard, because the real plot twist isn't the rescue. It's that Elena becomes the most dangerous person in the room.
For most, an aisle is a path to a new chapter. For Elena Cross, it was the signature line on a grim transaction sealed with her own body. She was the final price. At the altar, Victor Drazi wasn't anticipating a bride. He was awaiting a new asset. Inside that cold Chicago church filled with men whose hearts were stone, the reality struck her. This was no wedding. It was a hostile acquisition. But when a violent crash shatters the ceremony and a complete stranger offers an escape, her choice is stark: be erased or be liberated in a blaze. The consequences of her decision are about to fracture the city's entire underworld. The October wind in Chicago bit through the lace of Elena's gown, a cold she understood intimately. The white dress symbolized purity, a twisted joke for a woman being treated as premium property changing owners. Her reflection in the church anteroom was a stranger. The gown's perfect fit was a chilling detail her father had arranged. He had orchestrated every part of this catastrophe, all except for her unbroken will. "Mija, you look magnificent." Elena's jaw locked. Her father, Carlos Cross, stood framed in the doorway, his expensive suit failing to conceal the tremor he'd carried since falling into Victor Drazi's debt. "Do not call me that." Elena's voice was a dangerous whisper. "You lost that right when you used me as currency for your mistakes?" Carlos recoiled, but held his position. "It's not so simple." "It is exactly that simple." She wheeled on him, the fire in her eyes forcing a step back. "You gambled everything. Our home, my mother's jewelry, your own soul. When nothing was left, you wagered me." "Victor is a good man. Victor is a predator." The word was absolute and ugly. "He trades in arms, narcotics, and terror. Half this city fears him, the other half is on his payroll. And you are serving me to him on a platter." Carlos's face became a mask. "You don't understand these matters." "Oh, I understand completely." Elena's tone became pure ice, a defense she had long since perfected. "I understand you are a coward. I understand you would throw your daughter to the wolves to save your own skin. And I understand that from this day on, I am an orphan." The words landed like fists. For a desperate moment, she prayed he would break, beg her forgiveness, offer some way out. She searched for a flicker of the father he once was. But Carlos Cross was too consumed by fear. "The ceremony is in 15 minutes, he said, his voice utterly hollow. "Be prompt." Then he turned and walked away. Elena confronted that stranger in the mirror again. The intricate hairstyle did not belong to her. The makeup was applied by an artist Victor employed. The dress was worth more than 6 months' wages from the photo studio he had forced her to leave. "The wives of men like Victor do not have careers," he had informed her. "They simply are." Her phone vibrated against her hip, a reckless temptation she should have resisted. But her hand moved on its own accord before her mind could intervene. The message was from Sarah, her best friend, the one person who insisted this entire arrangement was insanity. "It's not too late. The car's ready. I have cash. Just give the word." Elena's thumb hovered over the screen. It was so simple. Just 3 letters. YES. Sarah would appear. They would vanish. But it was a fantasy. Victor Drazi does not lose his possessions. Men like him have long memories and an even longer reach. If she fled, others would suffer. Sarah would be hunted. Carlos would be executed. She deleted the message unanswered, just as the door creaked open once more. Victor's sister, Celeste, occupied the doorway, her designer dress like armor and her smile a finely honed weapon. "It is time," she announced, her eyes scanning Elena like she was inventory. "Victor is waiting. He must be ecstatic." Celeste's smile remained fixed, but her eyes became frigid. "A piece of advice. The sooner you accept your new existence, the less it will pain you. Victor is generous to those who please him and exceedingly cruel to those who do not." "Is that the fiction you tell yourself?" Elena stared back. "To live with whatever put that shadow in your own eyes?" For an instant, Celeste's perfect composure cracked. A flicker of old, buried agony surfaced before her discipline forced it back into hiding. "You will learn," Celeste hissed, "one way or the other." She departed, leaving Elena with only the tolling of the church bells. Her time had expired. She walked the hall, feeling utterly detached from her own body. At the end, Carlos waited to complete his delivery. "Elena," he began. "Don't!" She took his arm as required, her gaze fixed ahead. "Just do not speak." The immense sanctuary doors swung open. St. Augustine's was filled with a silent assembly of men in dark suits with impassive faces. This was Victor's circle, his enforcers, his clan, his territory. Her father's creditors were likely in the pews, observing their investment with satisfaction. And there at the altar stood Victor Drazzi. He was handsome in a way that broadcasted danger, all sharp features and barely leashed power. At 42, he had erected an empire on Chicago's vices. His tuxedo was flawless. He smiled at her, a gesture that never touched his eyes. His eyes were the most unnerving part of him. They were dark, cold, and calculating, like a man inspecting a new car, testing its limitations. Elena willed her body onward. Left foot, right foot. Do not think, just move. The wedding march sounded like a death knell. Halfway to the altar, she faltered and met his gaze once more. He winked. That casual, proprietary gesture shattered her fragile control. This was real. In moments, she would be legally bound to this man who would own her entirely, with no escape. She was 3 rows from the altar when the main doors of the church imploded. It was not a bomb, but the sound of splintering wood on stone was a physical impact. Every head turned. A man was framed against the gray light. Tall, imposing, his black suit made for movement, not style. He did not rush. He advanced down the aisle with a terrifying calm that stole the air from Elena's lungs. The sanctuary descended into chaos. Victor's men drew weapons from their jackets. Screams erupted as people dove between pews for safety. The priest stepped back from the altar, hands raised as if he were a hostage. The stranger never broke stride. "Adrian," Victor's voice cut through the pandemonium. "You have a supreme amount of nerve to come here." So they shared a history. The man, Adrian, stopped directly beside Elena. Up close, his face was hard, as if carved from violent memories. A thin scar sliced through his left eyebrow. His eyes were nearly black, and when they met Elena's, the contact felt like a blow. "Elena Cross," he said, his voice a low rumble more frightening than any shout. "You have a choice." "She is going nowhere with you," Victor snarled. "She belongs to me, paid for in full." "You cannot own another person." Adrian's eyes remained locked on Elena. "Regardless of the deals made, you are not property. You are a woman, and you have a choice." Elena's heart pounded against her ribs. A circle of Victor's men had formed around them, guns aimed, awaiting the command. This man was about to die for interrupting a wedding, and he was offering her salvation. "Who are you?" she whispered. I am the man leaving this church, Adrian answered and extended his hand. The only question is if you're leaving with me. This is insanity, Carlos hissed beside her. Elena, do not move. Your opinion is no longer relevant, Adrian countered, his gaze sweeping over Carlos with pure contempt before settling on Elena again. The choice belongs to her. If you leave with him, Victor's voice dropped to a lethal whisper, I will hunt you. I'll make you watch as I burn everything you ever cared for, and then you will beg me to take you back. Elena knew he was sincere. Victor Drowsy was not a man who bluffed. But caught between the man who had bought her and the stranger offering rescue, one thing was certain. Either way, her former life was already gone. Marrying Victor signified erasure, a slow death of her spirit beneath the weight of his control. Going with Adrian meant risking a swift, violent end, a bullet, a blade, something final. Between the two fates, only one would let her die as herself. Elena's fingers found Adrian's. His grip was warm and firm, a current that jolted through her, changing the world. A raw sound tore from Victor, half order, half curse. The distinction didn't matter, as the church erupted into a storm of gunfire, but Adrian was already in motion, pulling Elena behind him, his body a living shield, as they began to battle their way out, but not toward the main doors. Their primary route was blocked, so Adrian changed course, heading for a small side door. Gunfire exploded, a harsh cacophony of splintering wood and shattering stained glass. A scream cut through the air. Impossible to know if it was a guest or one of Victor's men. Adrian simply kicked the door off its hinges and propelled her into a dark, tight hallway that smelled of old incense. The street was at the other end. Stop! Elena choked, the wedding dress becoming a designer prison. I can't run in this. Without pausing, Adrian knelt and ripped the entire bottom half of her gown away. A sound like a soul being torn in two ripped through the corridor. Elena could only watch, paralyzed, as the white lace of her dress became a monument to the life she had just lost. Better, he rasped, his grip a cold manacle on her wrist, pulling her into the chaos. They spilled onto a side street where a dark SUV idled, a predator in the gloom. He pushed Elena inside with brutal efficiency before following. Drive was the only command given. The silver-haired man at the wheel needed no further instruction. The vehicle surged from the curb as Victor's men flooded the church entrance, weapons raised. Gunfire echoed as a sharp turn stole them away, dissolving into Chicago's traffic with a chilling surgical skill. She was thrown against Adrian's unyielding frame, his arm a bar of steel laid across her, a shield from the violence they fled. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm inside her chest, her hands trembling so fiercely she had to clench them into fists. What? She breathed. What was all that? Adrian's reply was a blade of pure, chilling sarcasm. A wedding, and then a swift annulment. My congratulations. A sound tore from Elena's throat, a fractured, ugly thing that was not a laugh. It was the sound of trauma itself, a hysterical torrent of sobs she could not hope to control. Beside her, Adrian sat like a stone effigy, letting the storm of her despair break and then recede. When only a shivering quiet remained, she was able to truly see him. Why, she asked, her voice sharp with anguish, why this utter madness? His face was a perfect, unreadable mask. Because Victor Drossi is a sickness, and you are not going to be his next affliction. You don't know who I am. I know all that is necessary. The statement was both an enigma and a clear threat. Before she could demand more, the driver's voice cut in. "We have a tail, 2 sedans hanging back." Elena's head snapped around, her eyes locking onto 2 black cars weaving through the chaos, closing the gap. "Time to the sanctuary?" Adrian asked, his voice unnervingly level. 20 minutes, 15 if things get inventive. Be inventive. The SUV lunged, pinning Elena back against the seat. They carved a desperate path through Chicago, bleeding through intersections and slicing through alleys as if the city's layout was etched into the driver's mind. But Victor's men were persistent. "Marcus," Adrian said, his tone impossibly steady, "upon reaching Lakeshore Drive, you will remove them permanently." Elena's nails bit into the leather. "Who are you?" "We're the anomaly that is keeping your heart beating," Marcus answered from the front. "For anything more, your questions are for him. My purpose is to drive." They merged with the traffic on Lakeshore Drive at over 70 miles an hour, the skyline melting into a blur of steel and light. Marcus drove with the precision of a surgeon and the soul of a madman, forcing Elena to squeeze her eyes shut. When she opened them, the pursuing cars were simply gone. "Targets have been neutralized at the interchange," Marcus reported. "We are clear." The tension in Adrian's arm finally eased. "Good! Remain alert. Victor is predictably relentless." "Victor will murder me," Elena whispered, her voice hollow with terror. "He will murder all of us." "He will certainly make the attempt," Adrian agreed. "But to do that, he must find us first." "This is Chicago. He controls 50% of this entire city." "And I," Adrian stated, "control the other 50. He met her gaze, and what she saw in his eyes was more chilling than Victor's rage. It was absolute, unshakable certainty. "Victor Drazi has influence, but he is no god. To reach you, he must now come through me." "But why?" Elena pleaded again. "Why do you care? What am I to you?" Adrian simply turned his head, his focus on the cold gray expanse of the lake. "You are someone who did not deserve to be treated as property," he said at last. It was not an answer, and it was all she would receive as they sped away from the city. The dense cityscape gave way to the stark silhouettes of trees. Marcus eventually guided them down a private lane that terminated at a gate that looked like a military checkpoint. He entered a code, and the heavy gate slid aside. Beyond lay a monstrous home of sharp, angular stone and glass, carved into a lakeside hill. It was both beautiful and deeply unsettling, protected by high walls, cameras, and silent suited guards who watched their approach without emotion. "Welcome home," Adrian murmured, and the phrase sent a chill down her spine. This was no home. This was a gilded cage. She had only traded one captor for another. Marcus halted the SUV, and Adrian was at her door in an instant, his hand extended. She paused, looking at the hand that had dragged her from one hell into this new, uncertain one. With no other path to take, she accepted it. The October wind coming off the lake was a blade, cutting through her ruined dress. She stood there, frozen and utterly adrift. Adrian removed his suit jacket, draping it over her shoulders. It was heavy with his warmth and smelled of expensive cologne and the faint, sharp tang of gunpowder. "Come," he said simply. "Inside." The mansion's interior was as cold and imposing as its exterior, a sterile gallery of polished surfaces and minimalist art. But Elena's attention was fixed on the 4 individuals waiting for them, 3 men and 1 woman, all dressed in dark, functional attire, their gazes a mixture of cold assessment and boredom. "This is the asset?" the woman inquired, her eyes dissecting Elena. She is underwhelming. She appears as someone who has just escaped Victor Drazi, Adrian countered, his voice laced with quiet menace, which makes her either incredibly courageous or incredibly foolish. Regardless, she is now under my protection. Disseminate this. Anyone who disturbs her without my express command will answer to me. The air in the room grew colder. It struck Elena then. These people were not just loyal to Adrian, they were terrified of him. Adrian said, escort Elena to the guest wing, procure whatever she requires, and post a guard at her door. To keep her in or to keep others out? Ree asked. Both. The dread in Elena's stomach hardened into a solid block of ice. I am a prisoner. You are protected, Adrian corrected her, his tone flat. There is a distinction. Is there? Elena clutched his jacket tighter. Because from where I am standing, they feel precisely the same. For a fleeting moment, something that might have been respect flickered in Adrian's eyes. A fair point. Allow me to be direct. You are not a captive. You are free to walk out that door this very moment. Elena's gaze shot to the door, then back to his face. And Victor's men would cut me down before I reached the gate. So this freedom is merely an illusion. You are free to make a choice, Adrian said, but every choice has a consequence. Stay here, and you live. Leave, and you die. That is not my decree. It is your new reality. It was a cage built of cold, inescapable logic, and it left her feeling utterly broken. For how long? She whispered. How long am I to be trapped here? Until Victor forgets me? Adrian's expression turned grim. Victor never forgets, and he never forgives. Therefore, the duration is indefinite. The last of Elena's strength drained from her, leaving her hollow and shaking. Ree stepped forward, her features softening almost imperceptibly. Come on, she said, her voice now unexpectedly gentle. The asset requires stabilization. We need to provide nourishment and a place to wash. Elena wanted to fight back, to scream for the life that had been incinerated. But Ree's clinical assessment was undeniably true. She was on the verge of collapse. The world was tilting around her. Fine, she finally conceded. Ree led her through the vast, silent house, up a sweeping staircase, and into a suite that dwarfed her entire former apartment. It held a bedroom, a bathroom, and a sitting area, all decorated in a minimalist style that felt both calming and deeply impersonal. The washroom is through there, Ree stated. Someone will bring clothing that fits. Dinner is served at 1900 hours if you care to join us, or it can be brought to you. I will eat here, Elena replied instantly. The thought of sitting at a table with Adrian and his soldiers was unbearable. Ree offered a small, understanding nod. As you wish. And Elena, for whatever it is worth, you chose correctly. Victor would have utterly destroyed you. As opposed to this? Elena gestured around her luxurious prison. Yes, Ree said, her voice devoid of emotion. As opposed to this? She departed, and Elena heard the soft click of the lock, followed by the sound of boots taking position outside. A guard to keep her safe and to keep her contained. Standing at the window, Elena saw her own reflection in the dark, churning lake, vast, wild, and yet utterly confined. A vibration from the purse Celeste had given her a lifetime ago this morning broke the spell. Time itself felt fractured. The message was from Sarah. Where are you? Your father claims you left with a stranger. Victor is enraged. Please, just tell me you are safe. Elena stared at the words, a tether to a life that now seemed like a distant dream. How could she ever explain this? "I am safe," she typed back. "I can't talk now. I will explain when I can. Do not be afraid." Each word was a lie, a firewall built to protect her friend from the truth. What other choice did she possess? As she set the phone aside, the screen illuminated with a message from an unknown number. "You have made a profound error, Elena, but my capacity to forgive is immense. Return within 24 hours, and this incident will be forgotten. After that time, this offer is rescinded. Victor." The tremor returned to her hands. She read his words 3 times, her thoughts racing. Was it possible? Could he truly forgive this? No. Victor Drazi forgave nothing. It was bait. A lure to make her walk willingly back into his cage. Once there, the game would be over. She deleted the message, blocked the number, and knew, with a terrifying clarity that cut through the fear, that she had to do something before she shattered completely. In the bathroom, Elena turned the shower knob until the water ran scalding. She let the punishing heat turn her skin crimson, a desperate ritual to wash away the church, to scour off the feeling of Victor's ownership. When she emerged, wrapped in an impossibly soft towel, she found proof someone had been in her room. A curated pile of clothing lay on the bed. Jeans, sweaters, new underthings, all her size. The question of how they knew opened a terrifying chasm of other questions. What was the extent of Adrian's intelligence on her? How long had this been planned? And the most vital unknown, what was his ultimate goal? She pulled on the jeans and a gray sweater. Their fit was a cold, perfect threat. Her wedding gown was a ruined heap on the floor, a relic of a life she would never have to endure. She lifted it, feeling the dead weight of the silk, and a wave of fierce, almost cruel satisfaction washed over her. The dress was merely a costume for a part she had just violently quit. She threw it in the trash. A sharp knock on the door made her flinch. "Your dinner is here," a man's voice called. Elena opened it to a young man with a tray. He couldn't have been more than 25, with a welcoming air that was jarringly out of place in this fortress. "My name is Ethan," he offered with a smile. "I'm the household coordinator. I'm your man if you need anything." "A time machine," Elena retorted, her gallows humor a tiny act of defiance. Ethan's smile broadened. "We're fresh out of those, but I can offer you pot roast, mashed potatoes, and a slice of pie." Despite everything, her stomach betrayed her with a growl. She'd had nothing since her morning coffee, running solely on anxiety. "Thank you," she said, accepting the tray. Ethan nodded and began to walk away, then paused. "Listen, I realize this is an extremely strange situation, but Adrian is a good man. It might not appear that way right now, but you are safe here, safer than you have been in a long, long time." "How can you be so sure about that?" Elena challenged. "Because I know exactly what Victor Drazi does to his possessions." Ethan's easy smile evaporated. "And believe me, you do not want to experience that firsthand." He departed before Elena could probe further. She ate the meal alone. The perfectly prepared food tasted like ash in her mouth. Outside her window, the sun sank, streaking the lake with violent shades of orange and red. Beyond these walls, Victor was plotting his revenge. Inside, Adrian was plotting. What? What was his endgame for her? And deep within Elena, an emotion she hadn't felt in years ignited. Not fear, not defeat, but pure, undiluted rage. She had been handled like a commodity, bartered, traded, abducted, and caged. Her life had been controlled by men who saw her as an object, a strategic advantage, anything but a person. That time was at an end. Elena Cross had no clue what was next. Surviving the week was a flip of a coin. She couldn't decide if Adrian was a savior or simply a new warden in a more luxurious prison. But one thing was absolutely clear: she was no longer property. Whatever was coming, she would meet it on her own 2 feet. And if Victor Drazi or Adrian Vale or any other man saw her as a pawn, they were in for a painful shock. The prize they were fighting for had grown claws, and she was finally ready to use them. As darkness consumed the lake, Elena Cross started the grim arithmetic of her own survival. An argument beneath her window had destroyed the little sleep she'd managed. Each creak of the house, every footfall, was a surge of raw adrenaline. The conviction that Victor's men had at last tracked her down. But the cold gray dawn broke, and she was still breathing. It was a victory, however small and hollow it felt. She moved to the window to see Adrian and Marcus on the lawn near the water. The glass distorted their words, but their bodies screamed conflict. Marcus's hands chopped at the air, his face a mask of pure fury. Adrian simply stood like a figure carved from stone, his expression unreadable, his stance relaxed. Then Adrian spoke something low, and Marcus went completely still. After a taut silence, Marcus jerked his head in a sharp nod and stalked away, his back a rigid line of defeat. Adrian remained, gazing out at the water as if trying to force answers from the waves. Elena drew back from the window an instant before he might have turned and seen her watching. The last thing she needed was the label of a spy. On the nightstand, her phone screen came to life. 3 messages from blocked numbers revealed Victor's new approach. "Time is running out, Elena. Your father is begging me to bring you home. Should I inform him you chose a stranger over your own family? I expected better from you. This is a profound disappointment." Elena erased them all without a second thought, denying him the victory of a response. To reply was to get caught in his psychological traps, and they were already proving effective enough. A sharp knock on the door made her jump. "Who is it? It's Ree. Adrian needs you. Breakfast will be in 20 minutes. It was not a request, Elena understood, but a summons. "I'll be down in a moment," she replied. She showered, pulled on another set of the provided clothes, and attempted to smooth her hair so it didn't look like she was unraveling. It was a fool's errand. The woman staring back from the mirror had deep circles under her eyes, skin the color of old parchment, and a hard set to her mouth, an expression she inherited from her mother in moments of intense anger. Her mom, gone 3 years now, was fortunate not to know her husband would one day use their only child as a bargaining piece. In the unforgiving morning light, that ignorance felt like a blessing. Elena followed the scent of coffee downstairs. The kitchen was a cold, clinical space of steel and marble, devoid of any warmth. 6 people were seated at a long table, Adrian at its head, Marcus and Ree flanking him, and 3 unfamiliar faces. Every one of them turned to stare the instant she entered the room. Adrian, his eyes empty, directs Elena to a chair. He places her at the table's far end, isolating her. Every gaze is fixed on her. After a silent, tense breakfast, Adrian makes the announcement, "This is Elena, and she is now under his protection." We are introduced to the team: Nikolai the enforcer, James the spotter, and Sophia the smiling killer. Nikolai declares that hiding her is a foolish risk, but Elena retorts that a man like Victor never gives up. He only escalates his hunt for blood. She understands she's a burden, a living chess piece between 2 powerful men. Sophia respects her spirit, but Marcus counters that courage is no defense against a bullet. Adrian then delivers the final blow. She's a captive here. No contact, no allies, no way out. They are effectively wiping her from existence to ensure her safety. Ree reveals that Victor's search is active and the entire criminal underworld has been alerted. The bounty on her head. James drops the figure, $200,000 plus favors owed. Elena is staggered. Adrian explains it with cold detachment. This isn't personal, it's about Victor's pride. She humiliated him, and now she is an asset to be recovered. She lets out a dark smirk, and Marcus warns her that she fails to grasp just how dead she truly is. Humiliating a monster of Victor's caliber means he will demand a heavy price in flesh. She remarks he should have just ended her at the altar. Adrian counters with a revelation. Their conflict began long before her wedding. Just then, an alarm sounds. 2 vehicles are surveying the property. Adrian immediately initiates a lockdown and doubles the security patrols. His team soon reports that Victor is bringing in assassins from New York, Detroit, and Miami. Their personal dispute has just become a national manhunt. The sheer scope of the situation finally crushes Elena. In a panic, she suggests they flee the country. Adrian dismisses the idea instantly. Victor has influence in 15 nations. She would be dead within 48 hours. The only escape is not to run, but to put Victor himself in a grave? She sees it as blackmail, but he frames it as survival. He makes her confront the truths. Victor won't just kill her, he will make her suffer. That reality finally shatters her resolve. Cornered by her own decisions, she consents to their terms. So, what is the strategy? Adrian presents her with a flash drive. He asks about a photo shoot she attended 3 weeks prior at a hotel. She has a faint memory of it, but he refreshes her recollection. 2 influential men were present, Senator Carson and Victor Drazi. And here's the twist. James clarifies that the senator is meant to be leading a crackdown on illegal arms trafficking. Yet he was photographed with Victor, one of the largest arms dealers on the coast. In her photo, a shipping manifest is visible right behind them. They require a complete intelligence download from her. Every overheard word, every person she saw, every minor detail. That flash drive is a live explosive. Ree states it's not a defense. It is a weapon designed to dismantle Victor's empire. Elena's own fury finally seals her decision. Victor's obsession has forged a new enemy. Elena agrees to cooperate, but with a condition. She will trade information for information. She demands to know the real reason Adrian intervened to save her. He simply rises and tells her to come with him. On a terrace lashed by a coming storm, he finally explains. 3 years ago, Victor attempted a hostile takeover of his territory, violating a truce and executing 4 of his most trusted men. And the final, brutal detail? One of the men murdered was his own younger brother. So that is her purpose. She is the key to his vengeance. Adrian corrects her. She isn't a weakness to be protected, but a strategic opening to be used. He saw her engagement notice and recognized she was the perfect instrument for his plans. She wasn't saved, she was acquired. Adrian lets the hero mask fall, a calculated gambit to prove he is unlike the other monsters in her life. He tells her directly, saving her is a side benefit, not some noble act. This brutal honesty resonates with a woman accustomed to constant manipulation. She asks what he intends for her, her voice that of the captive she is. Adrian's answer is pure tactics, vowing she won't be his possession to win her trust, framing this as her great opportunity, not an exchange of one master for another. And so, when he offers this mirage of freedom, a prize held just out of reach, she is naturally distrustful. Elena counters him, explaining that his control is not of the body but of the mind. Unlike the prisons built by her father and Victor, he presents a crossroads. Help him destroy their mutual enemy and reclaim her existence. It is not absolute liberty, but it is a world away from a guaranteed grave. In his gaze, she finds no lie, only a man hollowed by fatigue and sustained by pure hatred. Her agreement, on her own terms, is the first quiet act of taking her life back. Elena's first instinct is to demand a role, the natural response from a soul that has been powerless for so long. Adrienne dismisses the notion under the guise of her safety, but to her it is merely the echo of male control. In her eyes, his fortress is not a sanctuary, but another cage, and he is just the latest warden in her life, following her father and Victor. She delivers an ultimatum. She will walk into danger by her own choice. The time for being a pawn is over. She intends to command her own fate. For a fleeting second, you can see a flicker of recognition in Adrian's eyes, the quiet acknowledgement of a fellow survivor. Yet he rebuffs her still, labeling her strategy a death wish. Elena responds with cold, hard logic, transforming her greatest liability into a weapon, her own invisibility. She argues that as a non-entity, she can breach places his armed soldiers could never touch. In essence, her weakness is their most powerful secret weapon. She tells him their survival is linked. Her access is worth more than any testimony. Adrian simply observes her for a long moment, his mind calculating. Then the barest hint of a smirk reveals his admiration for her gambit. "You are either incredibly courageous or simply unhinged," he murmurs. "A measure of both," she replies. He reasserts his authority, placing the discussion on hold and ordering her to be guarded. But for Elena, even forcing him to hesitate is a victory. She has finally made a move on the board. Her sharp, "fine," signals she understands. She is now playing a much longer game. She makes a single request, that her escort not handle her like some fragile possession. Adrian then summons Sophia, a woman he describes as fundamentally incapable of coddling anyone. Before departing, Elena pointedly asks about his fallen brother, Daniel, a deft maneuver to cast their venture as a shared quest for vengeance. Inside, she finds Sophia, whose calm demeanor radiates a lethal competence. Sophia assesses the dynamic instantly, remarking that Elena's challenge to Adrian was either profoundly foolish or extraordinarily brave. "So you chose to bargain with Adrian Vale," Sophia observes, "which makes you either a complete innocent or possessed of more courage than any man in this fortress." Elena concedes she might be both. A short laugh escapes Sophia, a sound of grim approval. She then begins the tour, an orientation she calls a lesson in paranoia. Elena asks if the danger lies within their walls. Sophia's entire posture changes as she affirms that threats emanate from everywhere. Trust, she clarifies, is earned here, never freely given. They enter the command center, the very heart of the operation where all information converges. At its core sits Tommy, a digital savant navigating a storm of data streams. Sophia gestures to Elena, indicating she is the cause for the current state of high alert. Tommy confirms this, reporting Victor's operatives are probing the perimeter. At Elena's urging for more information, he displays thermal scans showing 3 distinct reconnaissance teams from the previous night. Their purpose was chillingly clear. They were searching for a way in. A new sharp fear pierces Elena as she inquires about their defenses. Sophia's answer is unsparingly honest. Every stronghold has its vulnerabilities, and survival is a race to mend them before the enemy exploits them. Staring at the screens, Elena feels utterly exposed. She softly asks about their chances, receiving only a silent, knowing glance between Sophia and Tommy. Then Sophia's voice turns to ice, assuring her that for a man like Adrian, failure is simply not a conceivable outcome. Sophia declares their next destination is the armory. Sensing Elena's reluctance, she articulates the grim reality. Should the walls be breached, self-preservation becomes a necessity, not a choice. The unsaid truth is that Victor had ensured she remained defenseless. The thought of a weapon makes Elena's skin crawl, yet she cannot argue with the stark, cold logic. The armory is a vault, filled to capacity with instruments of violence. When Sophia instructs her to select a handgun, Elena recoils, refusing outright. "This is a Glock 19 9mm, Sophia states, reciting its specifications like a clinical report. With one fluid movement, she corrects Elena's hold, teaching her the vital basics of how not to harm herself. Elena's hands begin to shake. The gun feels like a leaden weight, an artifact of some darker world. Her whispered, "I can't do this," is met with Sophia's stark reminder that the only alternative is to become a victim once more, rendering her entire struggle meaningless. The moment Elena acquiesces and begins her training marks a fundamental shift within her. The following hour becomes a deafening ordeal in the subterranean firing range. Initially, her aim is erratic, her entire frame resisting the weapon's violent recoil. But slowly, a stillness finds her, her precision sharpening with each discharged round. When they conclude, her ears are ringing with a profound, soul-deep exhaustion. Sophia's curt, "Not bad," is the only affirmation she requires. Firing practice is now a part of her daily life. "In 1 week you will be proficient," Sophia states. "In 1 month your probability of survival will tangibly increase." Elena silently prays she will never have to use this new knowledge. "Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. That is our way," Sophia tells her. Later, Elena consumes her meal without tasting it, her thoughts consumed by the memory of the weapon. She feels herself fracturing, the woman she once was becoming a ghost whose life was extinguished at that terrible wedding. This new Elena, born of terror and flame, remains a fragile thing. For 4 days, she is pushed through a crucible. Sophia manages her physical conditioning, while an analyst named James deconstructs her psyche. They sift through wedding photos, searching for any anomaly in the background. Her memory is a shattered mosaic, a casualty of the trauma. She cannot fathom how she, a professional, saw none of the warning signs. Then, on the 4th day, James pauses the video on an anonymous man in a gray suit, a shadow lingering in the periphery. James presses Elena to recall the man in the image, but his face is a featureless blur, lost in the maelstrom of the assault. The analyst provides a name, Thomas Garrett, an operator who exists in the twilight of the law. Elena flinches. Her mind is already saturated with darkness. James calmly notes that in their world, proximity to danger makes you a part of it. He pushes a tablet toward her, shifting from her fractured memory to a world of cold, hard data. The tablet displays the faint outline of a spreadsheet. Elena admits that during the attack, she entered a state of pure function, a survival mechanism that erased the finer details from her mind. James proposes they attempt to retrieve those buried memories, but the doubt on her face is palpable. Their session is abruptly ended by the arrival of Marcus, whose expression communicates that their dire situation has just descended into catastrophe. A communication from the man in charge, Adrian, electrifies the room and sends a shard of ice through Elena's veins. The atmosphere becomes heavy, charged with dread. In a voice far too tranquil, Adrian reports that their adversary, Vittorio, is finally making his play. He displays a surveillance feed of a home invasion. It is swift, brutal, and clinical. A stark demonstration of Vittorio's reach and a clear message that this game has no rules. The feed terminates just as a woman is dragged from the residence. A flicker of recognition curdles into pure, sickening dread. It is her colleague, Sarah. Adrian's voice cuts through the shocked silence, laying bare Vittorio's cruel design. He has weaponized her friend, turning her into a psychological explosive. As if summoned, a message from Vittorio arrives containing a photograph and a proposal for an exchange. It is a blow aimed with surgical precision at the very core of Elena's being. Elena's mind collapses, focusing on the immense debt of loyalty she felt she owed Sarah. But the others in the room saw the truth. This was no negotiation, but an exquisitely designed trap for the soul. Elena's eyes searched Adrian's face for a glimmer of hope, but found only the stark certainty of their doom. He named the situation for what it was: the private, sadistic theater of a malignant narcissist. Adrian explained Vittorio's twisted rationale. He needed Elena to witness Sarah's demise to inflict the ultimate emotional devastation. Adrian's proposed countermove was as simple as it was brutal. They would do nothing at all. Elena was horrified by the cold calculus, refusing to see Sarah as a disposable piece in their war. But Adrian's reply was a merciless equation. Acting now would result in 2 casualties, not 1. That single, terrible calculation broke her will. Overwhelmed by a tidal wave of guilt and obligation, Elena broke rank. "I'm going in by myself," she declared, an open act of defiance. A profound silence fell over the room, a silent war of wills between them. Adrian's voice lowered, taking on a tone of terrifying finality. He outlined the unvarnished truth. For her to go alone was not a rescue mission, but a suicide pact, and it would not buy Sarah a single moment more of life. "This is entirely my fault," Elena whispered, the devastating thought taking root in her soul. Adrian intervened, attempting to steer her rage toward its true author, Vittorio. He gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes, and asked what Sarah would truly want. But her answer revealed the depth of her fracture. She believed the greatest act of friendship she could offer was her own self-destruction. Adrian countered her wild energy with cold strategy, setting a 48-hour intelligence deadline. Ree nodded, recognizing the pressure tactic meant to incite a mistake. But Elena was drowning in a hurricane of despair. Her faint question about Sarah's fate in that time was laced with pure, unvarnished dread. Sophia's words cut through Elena's grief like a shard of ice. "This is not a rescue," she stated. "It's retribution." The trembling in Elena's hands ceased. A chilling stillness settled in her eyes. Seizing the shift, Adrian began issuing commands. Channeling their terror into a weapon of focused rage, James started tracking Vittorio's safe houses. Marcus began activating his network. While the team mobilized, Elena remained frozen, trapped by the specter of the live stream. Adrian began to speak, but her venomous look sent him away as she sank back into a prison of guilt. She was lost in a spiral of what-ifs, convinced that if she had just submitted to Vittorio, the horror would have ended. Adrian shattered that fantasy with a dose of harsh reality. Had she surrendered, Vittorio would have either methodically broken her mind or simply ended her life. He told her the shield was a useless indulgence and put her to work. Numb, she complied. For the next 6 hours, the drone of data entry was the only thing keeping the screams at bay. The work was a fragile barricade. As the clock struck midnight, Vittorio launched another assault. He sent a venomous message pinning the blame on her, with a new photo displaying his grim work. He included a schedule for the coming torment, a countdown to hell itself. A violent tremor shook Elena. James insisted they were just mind games, but his words felt entirely empty. James stated the obvious. Vittoria was trying to destabilize her, to fray her nerves until she committed a fatal error. A silent understanding passed between them. The danger was real. Elena left to confront the horror in solitude. When she returned, the fear in her eyes had been replaced by a core of ice. This newfound clarity accelerated their search, and by dawn, they had found a location. It was an abandoned warehouse in the industrial sector, held by one of Vittoria's proxy corporations. "She is there," Adrian stated, indicating Tommy's satellite imagery. "It's secluded, defensible, with a fast exit." "So, how do we get in?" Elena asked, fueled by over 24 hours of fear and caffeine. "We don't," Adrian said, his tone flat. "Not now. We observe. We confirm her presence, count the hostiles, learn their patterns. We need 12 hours, perhaps less." He studied her. "I know you want to go, but impatience is a coffin. She is already broken, and if we botch this, we will only break her more," Adrian said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Trust my experience. Waiting is our only weapon." Elena fought the urge to scream, but Adrian's scars spoke for him. She could only nod. It was the longest 12 hours she had ever known. Sensing her fraying nerves, Sophia led her to the firing range. Elena burned through 200 rounds, her aim steadying as instinct took over. "You're getting precise," Sophia remarked. "I despise it," Elena replied, reloading. "Each shot feels like I'm practicing to kill a man." "Then stop practicing." Sophia's counsel was brutally simple. Instinct is for survival. Hesitation is a death sentence. She told Elena she was a survivor, not a killer, a vital distinction. When asked about taking a life, Sophia's answer was chilling. Guilt is a luxury reserved for the living. It was a bleak philosophy Elena couldn't embrace, but she filed it away for a day she hoped would never arrive. As dusk settled, Marcus and Nikolai finished their surveillance. "We have visual confirmation," Marcus reported. "Second floor, northwest corner. I saw 3 tangos, but we should expect more. Victor's not on site. The man is notoriously paranoid. His second, a man named Ramos, is in charge." Adrian's expression hardened. "Ramos. He's a far greater monster than Victor. He truly enjoys what he does." A cold fear gripped Elena. The strategy was a feint. Team 1 would breach from the front. Team 2, Reese and Sophia, would go for the roof to extract Sarah. "And what about me?" Elena asked. "You're benched." "Absolutely not." A nerve pulsed in Adrian's jaw. "This is not up for discussion." "Everything is up for discussion. You taught me that," Elena retorted, holding her ground. "Sarah knows none of you. She's terrified. She will fight you, but she will come with me." "That trust is precisely why you're a liability," Reese interjected. "Your emotions will get us killed." "Or it's the one thing that will get her out alive because I can calm her." Elena locked eyes with Adrian. "You said this was my call. I'm making it." After a long moment, Adrian gave a curt, unexpected nod. "All right, but you follow protocol to the letter. You will obey Sophia's commands without hesitation." "I understand," Elena said, awash with a mixture of terror and relief. "Get your gear," Sophia ordered, her gaze cool and appraising. The following 120 minutes were a surreal haze of preparation. Sophia outfitted Elena in black tactical gear, ran her through comms procedures, and made her recite the infiltration plan until it was reflexed. They handed her a Glock, the same model she trained with, and the extra magazines felt like anchors. "The chance you'll need it is slim," Sophia said, "but slim isn't zero." The ride to the warehouse was wrapped in a thick, suffocating silence. Elena was wedged between Sophia and Reese, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. Up front, Marcus drove as Adrian recited the plan a final time. They stopped 3 blocks away. At this late hour, the industrial park was a dead zone. All empty structures and weak flickering lights, the ideal stage for a quiet entry. "Comms check," Adrian's voice whispered. One by one, they responded. Elena's voice trembled, but the signal was clear. The team separated. Marcus, Nikolai, and Adrian advanced on the main structure. Reese, Sophia, and Elena moved toward a corroded fire escape, scaling the rear wall. "Move!" Sophia murmured, gesturing upward. The ascent was terrifying. The old metal groaned with each step, yet she reached the top in silence. Gravel and refuse littered the warehouse roof, a desolate expanse broken by a single entry hatch. Reese made short work of the lock, his kit getting it open in less than 30 seconds. They plunged into absolute blackness. A labyrinth of corridors and vacant rooms unfolded, sparsely illuminated by the occasional naked bulb. From below, Elena detected voices. Guards, perhaps something worse. Her grip on the Glock became a vice. Sophia navigated from memory, guiding them across the second floor to the northwest corner. They moved like ghosts past skeletal machinery, wrecked offices, and a truly nightmarish bathroom before Sophia's raised fist brought them to a halt. The signal commanded them to freeze. A sliver of light from a door ahead framed 2 men in conversation. "We've confirmed the target's position," Reese whispered into his comms. 2 hostiles on the door, awaiting the green light. "Copy that," Adrian's voice crackled back. 30 seconds. That half-minute stretched into an eternity. Then Elena heard it, the splintering crack of the front door being breached, followed by a cacophony of shouts and automatic fire. The 2 men guarding Sarah's room instantly drew their weapons, moving to join the fray. A fatal error. Reese and Sophia became predators, striking with swift, lethal precision. The guards were neutralized before they could process the attack. One downed by Reese's rifle, the other silenced in a blur by Sophia. "Clear," Sophia announced, testing the door. "Locked." Reese bypassed the lock with a single shot. The sound was explosive, the tight hallway. They poured into the room where the air tasted of raw fear. Sarah was there, bound to a chair as the intel had indicated, her face bruised, her eyes wide with terror. "Elena," she choked out. "I'm right here," Elena replied, rushing to her. "I'm here. I have you." Her hands trembled as she fumbled with the ropes on Sarah's wrists. They were pulled so tight they had broken the skin. "Faster," Sophia urged, her gaze fixed on the doorway. "We likely have 2 minutes before they send reinforcements." "I'm trying," Elena snapped. She finally freed one of Sarah's hands, then the other. Sarah sagged into her embrace, feeling unnervingly light, her body racked with tremors. "Can you stand?" Reese asked. I think so." Another burst of gunfire erupted downstairs, much nearer this time, followed by sharp, furious shouting. "We must leave," Sophia ordered. "Immediately." They half-dragged Sarah between them, hurrying back through the bewildering hallways. Elena's entire being focused on the sound of Sarah's ragged breaths and the frantic beat of her own heart. Behind them, she heard the heavy thud of approaching boots. "Contact rear!" Reese yelled, pivoting and firing. The first pursuer fell, but the sound of others echoed from the stairwell below. Elena could hear the rhythmic pounding of boots ascending the stairs. "Go now!" Sophia yelled, providing cover fire. They scrambled through the roof hatch. For one heart-stopping moment, Sarah's foot slipped, but Elena's hand darted out, pulling her up with a surge of adrenaline. They fell onto the rooftop as the wind bit into them, the fire escape a skeletal promise of safety. "Go!" Reese commanded. Their descent was a wild, uncontrolled scramble, Sarah crying out with each painful jolt. On the roof above, dark figures appeared, leveling their weapons. Sparks erupted as rounds ricocheted off the steel all around them. The hiss of a bullet tore past Elena's ear as they dove for the asphalt. Marcus was there, the getaway van idling, its door gaping open. "In now," he barked. They tumbled inside. The vehicle lurched away before the door could latch, its tires shrieking a protest against the ground. Elena cradled Sarah, a shattered but living soul weeping into her collar. "It's over," Elena breathed. "A balm for them both. You're safe. I've got you." The warehouse receded, but its ghost remained. "We're not heading for the estate." "Too obvious," came Adrienne's strained voice from the passenger seat. "Victor knows she's with us." "Oh, he'll be waiting at the main compound. We're going underground." The words were just noise to Elena. Her world had shrunk to Sarah, who was now utterly still, her frame like stone in Elena's embrace. It could be shock, or something far worse. "She needs medical attention," Elena stated, her voice devoid of emotion. "We have one there," Reese answered, phone already to her ear. "Dr. Chen, he's private. I'll get him." The sanctuary was a bland flat in a forgettable neighborhood built for invisibility. Marcus guided the van into a subterranean lot, and they smuggled Sarah up through a back lift, avoiding every watchful eye. Their refuge was a sterile, unwelcoming space, intended for fleeting shadows. Elena led Sarah to a couch, a steadying hand on her shoulder. The signs of deep trauma were all there, the vacant gaze into nothingness, the frantic, shallow breaths. Elena tried to reach her. "Sarah, look at me. You're safe." A brief spark of awareness lit her eyes, before a devastating sob tore from her throat. Then came the truth of the mind game used to break her. "They said you were gone," Sarah gasped. "That Victor ended you, and that I was to blame." Elena moved to neutralize the venom at once. "This was not your doing, understand?" Before a reply could form, Dr. Chen, an Asian man in his 60s, entered. He approached Sarah with a quiet, practiced demeanor, his gaze already assessing the damage. "I'll need to examine her," he said gently. Elena retreated, observing his precise, deliberate movements. Sarah recoiled at his touch but remained still. The doctor's verdict was blunt. A pair of broken ribs, probable concussion, extensive contusions. No stitches required. The doctor cataloged the body's wounds, assuring them she was out of danger. He then spoke of 2 roads to recovery, one for the flesh, another for the psyche. Her physical form would mend, but the healing of her mind was a question mark, lost somewhere behind that empty stare. He tended to her cuts, his patience silent and unfeeling. Only Elena's nearness seemed to tether her to the room. His last words were medical writ. 48 hours of rest, with a vigilant eye for any decline. "Alert me to any change," he murmured, and vanished as quietly as he came. In another room, Adrian, Marcus, and Nikolai were deep in a low, furious discussion, already sketching out their vengeance. Elena was oblivious. Her focus was a pinpoint on Sarah, guiding her toward the shower. The water cleansed the filth of her ordeal, but could not touch the profound trauma that held her body in a rigid, frozen state. Wrapped in clothes far too large, Sarah was led to a bed. The simple word, sleep, from Elena triggered a fresh surge of terror. Sarah's fingers became a vice around her wrist, her voice a desperate plea. "Stay with me?" Elena vowed she would, remaining at her side. In time, the crushing gravity of her experience pulled Sarah under, her grasp at last going slack. Her sleep, though, was a battlefield of tremors and quiet weeping. Elena confronted the weight of her own complicity, a guilt that stood apart from Victor's cruel script. The sadism belonged to Victor, but Elena had set the scene for his play. Her decisions had drawn the map that led him to Sarah. Adrian's quiet entry broke the somber spell. He inquired about Sarah, receiving a stark 3-word report. Sleeping, shattered, breathing. His effort to offer solace met an impenetrable wall of guilt. He spoke of a collective win, but her thoughts had already shifted to strategy, dissecting Victor's wounded ego and the brutal retaliation it would demand. "He'll send everyone he has after us," she said, a flat certainty. Adrian offered no counter, simply laying out their preemptive strike. Their ace was a dossier thick with evidence linking Victor to a triad of federal crimes, from arms dealing to conspiracy. With a witness now secure, the objective was his complete removal. Yet the promise of this tactical checkmate gave Elena no solace, only a profound emptiness. Federal agents were set to move at first light. "Tomorrow by midday, Victor Dradzi is a federal prisoner," Adrian declared with absolute conviction. "The case is sealed." But Elena's history was a lesson in the illusion of certainty. She steered the conversation back to the only thing that counted. What about Sarah? The girl was now their key witness, a title that made her a prime target. Adrian detailed the usual protocol: new identity, new existence, government protection. He then proposed his private security as an alternative, a gesture that felt to Elena like the construction of a more gilded cage. "Protection is not a prison," Adrian retorted, his tone taking on a sharp, foreign quality. "I'm giving her the means to live." Elena methodically dismantled his logic, recasting their alliance as a stark transaction. "You required a tool, and I was it. You required a lever, and I was used." In her eyes, his safeguards were mere decoration on a cold contract. The charge chiseled his features into stone. "Is that really how you see this?" His true intentions, however, remained an enigma between them. A curt "get some rest," and Adrian was gone, leaving the air thick with unspoken conflict. But rest was impossible. Elena's thoughts were deconstructing Victor's strategy. She saw it clearly now. His primary weapon was not brute force, but psychological warfare, the fabricated death, the engineered shame. As this clarity dawned, a piercing scream shattered the apartment's silence. Sarah, in the grip of a bad dream. Elena was there instantly, her voice a calm anchor. "It's all right. You're safe." It took several agonizing moments for Sarah's tremors to subside. Then the next phase of Victor's conditioning began. The apologies. "I am so sorry," became her constant refrain. When Elena tried to dismiss it, a frantic laugh escaped Sarah's lips before she confessed. She broke. She had fed him trivial, mundane facts about Elena's routines. For a hunter like Victor, such information was priceless. But Elena compartmentalized it. Sarah was breathing, and that was all that counted. She offered hollow words of comfort, while a fresh risk analysis calculated itself in her head. Sarah's small betrayal meant any sanctuary could now be a snare. Passing Sarah into Sophia's care, she found Adrian, Marcus, and James fixated on a screen. "The operation starts in 20 minutes, James declared. "Federal teams are staged at all 6 sites." A confidential source provided them with a real-time feed. The monitor showed armed units moving stealthily through an official-looking complex. The centerpiece was Victor's personal estate. A cold dread coiled in Elena's gut. She recognized it from pictures. It was the lavish prison he had constructed for her, a destiny she had only narrowly avoided with Adrian's help. The assault squad stormed the entrance, weapons ready, pouring into a vast, echoless chamber. The residence was silent, utterly still as a crypt. "He's gone," James said, his tone strained. Marcus was on his phone, his expression hardening to stone as he took the call. "All targets are empty," Marcus announced, confirming the massive failure. His home, his businesses completely scrubbed. Victor and his people had vanished into thin air. Adrian's voice was low and lethal. "He was warned. We have a leak." Knowledge of this was limited to this room and the feds, which means there's a traitor, Adrian analyzed, his gaze sweeping over each person. The venom in that single word, traitor, hung in the atmosphere. A mole meant nowhere was safe. "We find the snake," Ree's voice sliced through the tension from the hall. "Before we end up as corpses." "Agreed." "James, a complete review of all communications past 48 hours. Tag any anomaly," Adrian commanded, his attention shifting to Marcus. "Account for all our personnel. I want everyone watched until this is resolved." Nikolai looked stunned. "You suspect someone on our team?" "I suspect Vittorio understands how to purchase allegiance," Adrian countered. "And $200,000 buys a lot of it." The implication was a suffocating presence in the room. Elena felt a different fear now. The very people guarding her were now under suspicion. "And Vittorio," he continued, "can become invisible at wills." At that moment, Elena's phone vibrated. She steeled herself for another psychological play from Vittorio. The message, however, was from her own father. "Elena, Vittorio promises an end to all of this if you return. A clean slate. The bloodshed stops. Contact me." The message landed, and her fear transmuted into a frigid fury. Her father, once again attempting to use her as a bargaining chip. She presented the illuminated screen to Adrian. "He's manipulating your father," he diagnosed without pause. "Assuming the role of the peacemaker model." It was a transparently desperate move. "Your flight, your retrieval of Sarah." It was a brutal strike against his pride. He was a cornered beast, feigning strength, with some charade of mercy. Elena's laugh was brittle. "Who would believe it?" "His people will. He'll paint us as the villains and himself as the aggrieved party." Elena simply erased the message. For hours afterward, the air was thick with a suffocating paranoia. Tommy methodically searched each room for bugs as James dug through digital ghosts. One by one, Adrian interrogated them, searching for any fracture in their accounts. Elena sat with Sarah, who seemed more like a specter than a person. "I need to go home," Sarah whispered at last. "It's still too dangerous out there," Elena cautioned. "This world right here is the danger," Sarah countered. "This whole existence cowering in the shadows." She gestured at their gilded cage. "I can't do this." And don't say you're sorry. You're not who I'm furious with. This isn't on you. It's everything. Vittorio's depravity, your father's failings, my own mistakes. Her voice was a fragile thing. Elena reached for her hand. You're so incredibly strong. You made it out. I don't feel strong. I feel shattered into a million pieces. Can't they be put back together? Sarah murmured. I don't think so. Every noise. It throws me back into that room. Her tale concluded with a violent shudder. Words were meaningless, so Elena just held her as the dam finally broke. Later, she saw Adrian on the balcony, a dark silhouette against the city's glow. The afternoon sun was weak and cold, a perfect mirror for the mood. Anything? Elena asked. Nothing. He's either smoke or we're chasing the wrong shadow, Adrian replied, his gaze fixed on the skyline. Neither scenario is promising. So what now? We observe. We wait. A man with an ego like Vittorio's can't lurk in darkness forever. He will slip, and we have to be there when he does. So we just sit here? We remain ready, Adrian corrected, his eyes finally meeting hers. Survival is 90% patience, 10% force. This isn't going to be some grand cinematic climax. I wasn't looking for a spectacle, Elena said. I was just hoping for an ending. We're close. You keep saying that, but he vanishes every time. We are perpetually one move behind. Elena folded her arms. What if he's simply better than we are? What if he's untouchable? Then we rewrite the rules of the game. We stop hunting him and we force his hand. Make him come to us. With me as the lure. By creating a trap where he believes he's in control, but every move is one we've dictated. Elena searched his features, trying to see the strategy behind the stoic mask. You have a plan. The beginnings of one, Adrian conceded. Vittorio needs you back to restore his flawless image. So we're going to make him believe he's getting you. You expect me to walk into his arms? I expect him to think you are. The exchange will be in public, entirely under our control. He'll stride in, believing he's won, only to walk directly into a federal ambush. The danger was astronomical, but their options had dwindled to nothing. And if it falls apart? She asked. I get you out, same as before. That might not be an option this time. It will happen, Adrian said. His absolute conviction wasn't comforting. It was chilling, like a man prepared to burn down the world to honor a single vow. A strange sensation swept through Elena, a sudden, fierce impulse to shield him. This chaotic ordeal was warping the space between them. I need a moment to process this, she said. Take all the time you need. We have until... The buzz of his phone silenced him. He took the call and his body turned to stone. When? Where? How many? A cold wave of dread washed over Elena. Something had gone terribly wrong. Adrian ended the call. Vittorio just hit my South Side warehouse. Burned it to the ground. 3 of my men were inside. There were no survivors. I'm so sorry. This is a statement, a gambit to make me furious, to make me careless. Adrian's voice was utterly devoid of emotion. And it's working. What are you going to do? What I should have from the very beginning. Finish this. He was already heading for the door. Stay with Sarah. Do not leave this apartment. Marcus and Ree are posted outside. I'll return when it's done. Adrian? But he had already vanished with Nikolai and James in his wake. Elena stood alone on the balcony as the weight of 3 more lives settled upon her shoulders. When she returned inside, Marcus and Ree were speaking in low, grim voices. What is his objective? Elena asked. Neutralization, Rhea replied, his gaze unwavering. Whatever it takes. And what precisely does that entail? Whatever is required. The ambiguity was far more terrifying than any concrete strategy. The night stretched on. Elena and Sarah sat in a shared, anxious silence. Sleep was an impossibility. Near midnight, her phone lit up with a blocked number. She answered instinctively. "Hello, Elena." Vittorio's voice was smooth, educated, and utterly hollow. "So, let's have a discussion. Just us. No weapons, no entourage. A simple conversation about where this story goes." Elena's hand clenched around the phone. "How did you get this number?" "I always acquire what I desire. You, of all people, should understand that by now." The silence that followed was heavy. "I'm sending an address. Come by yourself. If your handsome Adrian or his lackeys appear, Sarah receives a bullet. If you're not there in an hour, her entire family is erased." "You don't have Sarah." "Correct, but I do have her mother and her brother, who is just a sophomore at Northern Illinois. It would be a tragedy if some harm were to befall them." A profound nausea churned in Elena's stomach. "You're bluffing." "Are you truly willing to gamble their lives on that assumption?" Vittorio's tone became ice. "1 hour, Elena. The location is coming. Do not disappoint me." The line went dead. A moment later, a text arrived with the address of a downtown tower. Her mind was screaming. This was precisely the snare Adrian had foreseen. Vittorio intended to kill her, but refusing meant sentencing Sarah's family to death, a burden she could never bear. She glanced at Sarah's door where the girl slept, finally finding a moment of peace. She saw her protectors, Marcus and Rhea, engrossed in the security monitors, wholly unaware of the threat against her. Informing them meant they would stop her, and in doing so, they would sign that family's death sentence. The choice was agonizingly clear. Elena decided, pulling on her coat and checking for the Glock Sophia had insisted she carry before moving toward the door. "Going somewhere?" Rhea's tone was sharp. "Bathroom," Elena lied. "Can't rest." She slipped past them into the Chicago night, moving toward the tower and the final confrontation. In that moment, something fundamental inside her shifted. She was finished being a piece on a board, her life a sequence of choices made by others. She resolved that this conflict would conclude on her terms, even if it cost her everything. The skyscraper was a black needle against the clouds, a monument to power. Elena observed it from across the street, the Glock a cold, dense presence against her back. The rideshare driver had been on edge, dropping her in the financial district so late. Her phone had been vibrating relentlessly, a flood of calls from Adrian, Marcus, and Rhea, who knew by now she was missing. Each call was a desperate plea for her to turn back. Elena shut the phone off and dropped it into a city trash can, severing the last tether. A lone security guard manned the lobby, a young man who looked deeply frightened. He accepted the floor number without comment, merely gesturing to the elevators. "The penthouse is on 42, he whispered. "You've been authorized." She had anticipated this. Vittorio's reach was absolute. The ascent in the elevator felt like an endless plunge. In the mirrored surfaces, her reflection was a pale, worn woman, driven to the brink but unbroken. The face staring back was not the one from the altar 2 weeks prior. That woman's decisions had been dictated. This woman was stepping into a death trap by her own will. There was a strange liberation in it, a clarity found only at the precipice. The door slid open into a room of dark woods and soft light. Vittorio stood at its center, hands in the pockets of a tailored suit. He appeared just as he had in the church, composed, masterful, and lethal. but his eyes were now a deeper, colder void. "Alana," he said, his voice easy, as if greeting a cherished friend. "I'm so glad you could make it. I confess I had my doubts. You held an innocent family's life over my head. I had no choice." "We always have a choice." Vittorio gestured to 2 chairs near the expansive window. "Sit. Let us be civilized." "I'd rather stand." "As you wish." He strolled to the window, gazing down at the sprawling city. "It's magnificent, is it not? All those small lives, oblivious to the world's true mechanics, to who truly holds the power." "Is that what you believe you are?" Elena retorted. "Superior. That your wealth and brutality make you significant." A small, cruel smile formed on Vittorio's lips. "My power grants me a liberty you cannot fathom. Your existence has been a series of cages, constructed by your father, by circumstance, by your own vulnerability. When Adrian Vale disrupted our wedding, you believed you had found a rescuer, but he merely moved you from a gilded cage to a different prison. He is nothing like you. No, he is far more dangerous. My cruelty, at least, is honest. Adrian conceals his beneath a veneer of honor, but we are carved from the same stone, men who seize what we desire and obliterate any obstacle." Victor turned to her. "The only difference is that with me, you would have had it all. Security. He offered you stability, a fortress. What has Adrian offered? A life as a ghost." "He offered me a choice." Elena's voice was sharp. "Which is infinitely more than you ever did." "A choice?" Victor tasted the word as if it were ash. "Allow me to illustrate the consequences. Sarah broken because you fled. 3 of Adrian's men turned to cinders because you interfered. And now you stand here, your final choice leading you to this room. Tell me, how does your freedom feel now?" His words were shards of ice, finding the part of her that knew he wasn't entirely wrong about the cost of her defiance. Lives had been lost, but that did not make him right. "You were the one who wounded Sarah," Elena countered, her voice dangerously low. "You were the one who gave the order. My choices never held a weapon. Yours did. This has always been about your loss of control. For the first time, someone told you no, and your paper-thin dominion shattered." Victor's expression became a chilling blank canvas, a stone effigy. "Choose your next words carefully, Elena. Your existence is by my command." "No, it isn't. I am here because you are failing." A sudden, brutal clarity cut through her terror. "The authorities are closing in. Your allies are vanishing. Your entire empire is crumbling. You thought reclaiming me, proving your ownership, would mend it all. But that time is over, Victor." The truth arrives long before it is welcome. For a moment, Victor was utterly still. Then a low, genuine laugh rumbled from deep in his chest. "You've grown a spine," he remarked. "I'll grant you that. The woman I was to marry would never have dared. The woman you were to marry is gone. You erased her when you tried to own her. A pity. I will miss her." His hand slid into his jacket. Elena's own hand twitched toward the Glock, but he produced only a phone. "Let me show you a picture." He angled the screen, revealing a live feed of Sarah's mother's home. 2 of his sentinels stood watch. "A single phone call," Victor murmured. "And my men will walk inside. Sarah's mother will die. Her brother will die. Perhaps I'll have them ignite the house. A terrible accident." Elena's fingertips grazed the textured grip of her firearm. "You won't." "And what prevents me? What power do you possibly hold?" "You need my compliance. If they are gone, I have no reason to obey you. and a woman with nothing left to lose is a creature to be feared. Victor weighed her logic. A fair assessment. So this is the arrangement. You return to my side, present a smile for the world. We'll claim Adrian manipulated you. We will be married. You will perform the role of the adoring wife, and Sarah's family will continue to breathe. I will even permit Adrian to live so long as he vanishes from my world. And I am to believe you would honor such a promise. I expect you to recognize it is the only one you will receive. Victor pocketed his phone. The other path involves me eliminating everyone you hold dear, one by one, until you beg for my mercy. Then I will eliminate them all regardless, simply to prove that I can. Elena's hand tightened on the pistol's grip. She could draw, fire. Perhaps she could even fell him before his men reached her. But that would not save Sarah's family. It would not recall the men from that quiet house. First, I require proof they are unharmed, Elena stated. Withdraw your men. Show me that Sarah's family is safe, and then we can speak. A faint smile played on Victor's lips. Clever, distrustful. I find I prefer this version of you to the timid girl from before. He drew his phone out once more. But no, you are not in any position to issue demands. You have one option: accept my terms, or I place the call. The elevator behind her chimed. Elena spun around, her heart a frantic drum, bracing for more of his soldiers. Instead, it was Adrian, flanked by Marcus and Nikolai, all of them armed for war. Step away from her, Victor. Adrian's voice was a low, dangerous calm. Victor's composure remained flawless. I was anticipating your arrival. Did you truly believe I would let her come here alone? This was never a trap meant for her. Victor spread his arms in a gesture of grand theater. Well, everyone, welcome to the final act. One way or another, everything concludes tonight. I agree, Adrian said, his tone flat, before his gaze locked onto Elena. Are you injured? No, she replied quickly. But he has men positioned at Sarah's family's home. Had men, Marcus interjected, his voice pure business. We neutralized them 10 minutes ago. Her mother and brother are secure. Elena could finally draw a full breath, but Victor only laughed. I should have anticipated that. Always so thorough, Adrian. It's almost charming. Victor's hand slipped back inside his jacket, this time emerging with a pistol. But thorough is not bulletproof. And from the shadows, 3 more of his men materialized. Their weapons were all centered on Adrian's team. So, this is the way it will unfold, Victor declared. Everyone lowers their firearms, nice and slow, or we are about to discover whose aim is truer. I have federal agents waiting. Adrian's voice was like ice. 3 floors down, pending my signal. You discharge that weapon, they will ascend, and this entire affair is concluded for you. You are bluffing, Victor retorted. If you had federal backup, you would not be here yourself. I am not bluffing. Adrian's expression was an unreadable mask. This was the strategy all along. Lure you into the open and let the government handle the rest. For the first time, a fracture appeared in Victor's smug confidence. You're lying. Am I? Adrian responded, raising his phone with his free hand. A single touch of a button could have ended the stalemate. But Adrian paused, ceding the stage to Elena, allowing her to confront her tormentor. Victor stared at her, not as a woman, but as a possession to be reclaimed. That look ignited something primal within her. Her training took hold, her body moving on pure instinct. The gunshot echoed through the room, the round striking Victor's shoulder and spinning him around as his own weapon clattered to the floor. In that same instant, both sides unleashed a volley of fire. The room erupted in a storm of lead and collapsing forms. The sound was deafening, each report a concussive blast, and Elena recoiled from the shockwave. The gravity of her action tried to pull her under, but the will to survive forced it away. Marcus seized her, pulling her to safety as the gunfight intensified. Through the haze, she saw Victor on the ground while his men were being methodically neutralized. The balance of power had been irrevocably overturned. Adrian stood over Victor, the man who had sought to own Elena's very soul. A broken, maniacal laugh escaped Victor's lips. It was the sound of a god complex shattering into dust. Then Adrian made the call. The wail of approaching sirens was the sound that finally pierced Victor's delusion, and raw panic flared in his eyes. Adrian began to recite the federal charges, each one a battering ram against the legal fortress Victor had built around himself. The case against him was ironclad. Surveillance photos, sworn depositions, a 5-year trail of laundered money. Victor could only manage a weak, sputtered curse. As agents flooded the suite, Adrian's team surrendered him. The entire time, Victor's hateful glare remained fixed on Elena. He issued one last threat, but the words were just empty noise. He understood on some level that the game had already been lost. An agent, a man named Chen, with a calming presence, approached to escort Elena from the scene. Adrian's protective instinct flared instantly, demanding to know her legal standing. Chen assured him she was being treated as a witness, a victim, his tone perfectly even. Her body began to tremble as the massive surge of adrenaline finally abandoned her. When they received absolute confirmation that Sarah's family was safe, a wave of relief so powerful washed over Elena, it left her without words. As they dragged Victor away, he spat one final toxic remark at Elena, attempting to frame her rescue as merely trading one cage for another. It was a classic abuser's tactic, an effort to reclaim his power over her. But Elena's quiet reply, "I don't belong to anyone," was a clear, definitive moment of triumph. The remainder of the night was a long, draining debriefing, a meticulous dissection of her ordeal. The sun was rising when Agent Chen finally delivered her to a secure location. It was a new day. Inside, Elena was greeted by Sarah, whose face registered pure horror at the blood spattered across Elena's clothing. The news that the monster had been captured finally broke through Sarah's carefully maintained control. Elena pulled her into an embrace, a shared moment of catharsis as both women began to process the end of their nightmare. After Sarah regained her composure, Elena went to find Adrian, needing to assemble a coherent narrative from the night's violent fragments. She admitted she had sensed he was watching over her, a truth he did not contest. When she offered her thanks, he deflected, giving her full credit for the decisive shot. She spoke of the shooting with a strange, clinical remove, confessing she felt nothing. It was simply a task that had to be completed, her mind cordoning off the horror. This inability to connect with her own actions was a stark warning of deep-seated trauma. Then, his last venomous words echoed in her memory. She relayed what Victor had said, that she had only exchanged one master for another. After a long, heavy pause, Adrian asked her what she believed. Elena conceded that she initially saw his motive as simple revenge, but that their circumstances had changed things. She began to dissect their connection, questioning if it was merely gratitude, a bond forged through shared crisis, or something more, a textbook symptom of a trauma bond. Her need for distance was a clear sign she craved a life of her own making. "I am making my own choice now," she declared, her voice resolute. "A choice I should have made long before someone else made it for me. I need to discover who I am when I'm not a fugitive or a victim." Her eyes met his. "Only then can we determine what this is between us, free of obligation or duress." He observed her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a slow inclination of his head, Adrian relented. "Okay." His single word shatters her expectation of a fight, of any debate at all. He is releasing her, absolving her of any perceived debt, his voice thick with the storm of suppressed emotion. "You owe me nothing," he repeats. He hints at a potential future, but only if she forges her own path first. "We need to know if this is real," he says, "or just the byproduct of adrenaline and confinement." Elena grasps the new reality. It is, as she thinks, petrifying, yet also liberating. She chooses to embrace the terror that comes with true autonomy. "It's messy, and it's nothing like the fantasy I was promised," she muses, "but it belongs to me." 3 weeks on, her path to recovery is showcased in a gallery in a different city. A photo series documents the solitary road trip she undertook to reclaim her own narrative. She speaks with Sarah every day, who has also begun her own therapy. For both women, the road to healing is finally materializing. Sarah's recovery was progressing well. In a painful but necessary act, Elena severed the final tie, blocking her father's number and all his efforts to reach her. The unexpected success of her art exhibition granted her financial freedom, the bedrock for her new existence. Her life was now her own creation, a whirlwind of pride, disbelief, and the quiet hum of anxiety that accompanies real change. It was utterly terrifying. This new existence felt isolating at times, yet it was the most vibrant she had ever been. A message from Adrian appeared. It was considerate, supportive, and honored the distance she'd requested. The exchange that unfolded was light, forging a bond untainted by the relentless pressure of their shared past. "I miss you," she typed. The admission was a sudden impulse, startling even herself, yet it felt genuine. A true connection, not the echo of trauma she had feared. For 21 days, every attempt to forget Adrian had been futile. The separation only seemed to intensify their bond. His message was a gentle vow of patience, a quiet acknowledgement of the hell they had survived side by side. A montage of their ordeal flashes through her mind: the vacant church, the inferno, the warehouse, and that one final sunrise. He was the one who offered her an illusion of choice when she had none. The central question lingered: can a connection forged in chaos ever thrive in peace? Still, seeing him again was inevitable, a calculated move to seize control of her own story. That story might yet involve the man who was her tormentor and her savior, the very definition of a trauma bond. Before that, however, she had to finish rebuilding herself. Elena studied her photographs, the tangible proof of her transformation. Outside, a downpour began, as if to cleanse the city. Here, Elena Cross was at last the protagonist of her own life, a world built on her own terms. The conclusion was far from perfect, but it was hers, and that was a victory in itself.
Let us pause right here because this story is absolutely vicious in the smartest way possible. On the surface, it looks like a classic setup: bad mafia boss, trapped girl, dangerous rescuer, boom, escape. But the emotional trap is way nastier than that. Everybody loses something. Victor loses control, Adrienne loses people, Sarah loses innocence. Elena loses the version of herself that still believed life could stay normal. That is why the story hits, not because evil gets punished, because by the time justice shows up, everybody is already bleeding. And here comes the biggest life lesson. The most painful betrayals are not always committed by enemies. Victor was exactly what he looked like, a predator in a suit. The real knife twist was her father, the one person who should have stood between Elena and the wolves, delivering her to them instead. That is the kind of betrayal that rewires a human being. It teaches them that danger is not always loud. Sometimes danger sounds apologetic. Sometimes it says, I had no choice. Meanwhile, the story keeps twisting the blade by showing that rescue is not pure either. Adrienne helps her, yes, but he also needs her. So what is Elena supposed to do? Easy. She does the one thing no one expected. She stops choosing which powerful man gets access to her fate. That is the win, not the gunshot, not Victor in cuffs. The win is Elena walking away from the whole emotional scam. She understands that revenge can end a threat, but it cannot build a self. Freedom can. So the takeaway for the audience is brutal and beautiful. Real growth begins when a person stops asking who will save me and starts asking who am I when nobody owns the pen anymore? That question is terrifying, but it is also the first honest step toward a life that is actually theirs.